All right, guys, welcome to the shop. This video is going to show my recommendations for beginner tools for axe restoration, axe maintenance, and just in general tool restoration. I will start with my top three. So this is top three bare bones. Number one is sandpaper. I keep it in a little folder. So I run 120 grit and 400 grit. You can do so much with sandpaper. You can remove the varnish from a new handle. You can sharpen an axe with it. You can use, like a 60 grit to remove the wood on the eye when you're fitting an axe head. There's so many things you can do with sandpaper. That's my number one. Second off, a hammer. And I especially like these cross-peen hammers, and I'll explain why later. And then third, coping saw. I prefer a coping saw. It is a lot easier to get right up next to the head when you're cutting off a handle. You can still cut a kerf with it. It won't be the best, but you can still cut a kerf. You can clean the kerf out if it's got varnish in it. So that's my number three. So those are my top three. Now, I will say, I recommend when sourcing, of course you do whatever you want. I recommend when sourcing tools, yard sales, garage sales, thrift shops. First and foremost, the reason why is because those yard sales and garage sales, they're going to have the cheapest vintage tools that you can find. So if you're looking to restore vintage tools, that's where you're going to find them at the cheapest. Okay, you're going to pick up axe heads for $1, $5, right? As opposed to eBay where the prices are skyrocketing. So through your hunt for tools that you're going to use to restore tools, you'll find those tools that you're going to restore, right? Makes sense. Now, there are a few things that I do recommend buying brand new, and we'll get into that. So I'm going to put the camera on the workbench and we'll get into it. All right, so first off, eye protection. Highly recommend eye protection, even if you're sanding, especially if you're filing metal, eye protection. As far as personal protection equipment, this is number one. Gloves, obviously, that's your choice. And then, of course, boots are optional also. You can do this barefooted. Next up, the Shinto rasp. This is a great little piece of equipment. You can thin a handle down with this. You can remove wood from the eye of the handle to mount the head. That's great. So you've got a bigger tooth and then a fine tooth on each side. That's a great piece. The Mill Bastard file, right? I recommend buying this brand new. You can find these all over the yard sales for super cheap, but it's hard to know if they're still in good condition. So I recommend buying that brand new. Now, for some basic chores, I do like a carpenter's or a carpet knife. This is really good at scraping off the varnish of a new hardware store handle. So that's really good. And then, of course, just a basic razor knife. Now, tape measure. Most everybody already has a tape measure. The next step up from a tape measure, caliper. Okay, that helps out a lot measuring the inside of the eye. That'll help when you're fitting the head, and it will help when you go to buy a handle. So you can measure the inside of your eye on your head, and then take this with you and measure the handle to make sure that the eye of the handle is big enough. All right, this is a piece I don't use all that often, but a wire brush, super handy. I do recommend buying this new also. When I see these at yard sales and whatnot, they're worn out for one, and two, you don't know what they've been scraping and cleaning with this thing if you buy this used, So I recommend buying that brand new also. These are cheap. Now, you have the spoke shave. If you can find one of these things at a yard sale, this is a very valuable tool to have when you're thinning a handle down and when you are fitting an axe head. All right, if I was to have one pair of pliers, it would be a pair of needle nose pliers. And the reason why is these needle nose pliers are very handy if you're trying to save a handle and you're not cutting the handle off. This is handy to get down inside when you're removing the wood wedge and you're removing the metal step wedge. So that would be the pair of pliers that I would get. Oh, furthermore, talking about wedges, the reason why if I was to have only one hammer, I would choose a cross peen is because if that's your eye and the wood wedge goes this way and you need to pound that down further, this is the perfect width. This one specifically is a great width to pound that metal wedge down and that wood wedge further into the eye. And that's why I would choose that. Now, a container for your oil. Specifically in my case, I choose raw linseed oil, and this is an argument that we could go back and forth over between raw and boiled. That's a whole nother video, right? I like these thumb pump oilers. They control the volume greatly, and you see these videos of guys just dumping oil all over the place. It's a waste of oil, and you're only creating a mess that now you have to clean up, right? Doesn't make any sense. Most everybody's got a number 2 pencil laying around. When I'm fitting an axe head, I will mark at the bottom of the axe head where it is in contact with the handle. I'll put a little mark there so that I know that I have to sand that spot off. If it doesn't have a pencil mark, it's not in contact with the eye, I'm not sanding it off. So a marking device. I use pencil. You could use a Sharpie. You could scratch a line with a knife. Now, leather. This leather is used to put on your handle. If you're going to clamp your handle down or put it in a vise, it will protect your handle. So, which brings me to my next piece. This would be the 4th piece that I get after a hammer, sandpaper, and a coping saw. Would be something to secure your workpiece to your workbench. Or your kitchen table or your kitchen counter, wherever you're doing it. Most of the time, this will do everything you need. You pick this up for $1 at a yard sale. So, C-clamp. If you want to take the next step up, I like these little removable bench mount vise. Okay, you put it on your bench and tighten it up. Cool thing about these is that for most of the work that you do on an axe, it will hold everything you need in place. What's great about it is you don't have to have a dedicated place on your bench, or like I said, if you're doing this in your kitchen table, it doesn't have to be bolted in and stay there. You could just screw it up and attach it. So you pick these up at yard sales for $5-10. All right. A cold chisel, but I like to grind the tip of the cold chisel blunt, and that again helps with pounding in wooden wedges. And I know it's a sin, but I will turn it around and I'll actually use this side and hammer on this side to pound out the wood of an eye if I'm removing the handle wood that's stuck inside of the eye. So that's a good one. And then these little tiny finish nail set, whatever. This is good. You know, I'll get in there and pry with that, which probably shouldn't do, but it's a multi-use tool to me. All right, next up, shop rag. This is a must. It probably should go in the top 5. So shop rag, when you're applying your oil, WD-40, whatever type of oil you're using for your axe head, it's always nice to get it cleaned up with a shop rag. Now, I do run the red ones, I buy them, but I wash them. Now, old t-shirt, an old sock, whatever it is, that's going to work just fine also. All right, moving on to power tools. The wire wheel. This is absolutely great. You're going to be able to remove a lot of the rust, but you're still going to be able to leave that good patina on there. I do stay away from grinding with a benchtop grinder anywhere near the bit. It just seems a little too aggressive for me. That is good for cleaning up the pole. If the pole's mushroomed, the backside of the axe, that's good for that. A buffer, if you're going to try to polish, that would be a good combination. Wire wheel and a buffer. All right, so Whiskey River Trading did a video where they hung an axe. Brandon hung an axe with nothing but a angle grinder. So phenomenal piece of equipment for hanging an axe, working on an axe. You can get a little carried away with it, but it's a great piece. And then obviously a drill. So drilling out that wedge, if you're trying to save the handle, I like to drill out the wedge. So a drill is good. Now obviously a drill press is something to have. A bandsaw, that's a great piece, especially if you're going to get into making your own handles. Bandsaw is great. Now I'll show you my number one power tool. Number one power tool right here. So this is a 1x30 belt sander with, I believe, a 5-inch disc on the side. This is my number one. You can sharpen an axe sharp enough to cut paper, which may or may not mean anything to you, but you can sharpen an axe sharp with this guy right here. So coupled with this bevel gauge, right? So we know how much we're taking off. If we're going to go sharpen an axe and you're trying to get in depth with it, eyeballing is great. I'm sure there's old timers out there that could grind it to 25 degrees, 22 degrees, whatever they want. This is a nice piece to have, especially if you're starting off with power tools, doing any type of reprofiling on the bit. Oh, can't forget, a little bit more advanced. This will take off a lot of material. You go fitting an eye with this, you could ruin an eye of a handle very fast by taking off too much. That's where that spoke shave would come in. All right, guys, so that's my list for a beginner axe enthusiast that is getting into restoring axes. So I'm sure there's some stuff that I miss. I'm sure there's some stuff that more advanced axe guys would like to add to that. So go ahead and drop a comment if you've got anything to say about that. I'm all about getting more knowledge, right? So there's a ton more to axe restorations and axe builds also, right? You can get into etching, you can get into, rust removal, different forced patinas, leather work, kydex work, all that stuff. So obviously that's more advanced, and some of that stuff may come in more detailed videos at a later date. So if you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like this content and you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.